Hey guys, welcome to the We Need to Calm Down podcast. I'm Devon.
And I'm Joe.
And this is the show where we talk about all things Taylor Swift.
That's right. This is the show where two friends finally get to let their dedication to our favorite pop singer in the world, Taylor Swift, fly.
We'll be discussing everything from song breakdowns, fan news, Taylor news, and our insane fan theories.
We almost flubbed that one, but we're going to keep that in. Devin, what's up with you? It's been a little while.
It's been a bit. I've been all right. I've been trying to live my semi-normal life.
Semi-charmed life. We are a music podcast now.
Semi-charmed kind of life. It's weird because I feel like, we're right before the holidays, right before Thanksgiving. And I feel like because I work at an in-person job, it's scary to think that, like, COVID is still real, but people aren't taking it as serious as they should anymore. And it just makes me nervous because, like, that after Thanksgiving, cases are going to skyrocket. And I've been thinking about my job, and I'm like, I'm surprised we haven't closed down yet. And I was talking to my therapist about it because everyone should go see a therapist. It's wonderful. And I always stress out about what I can't control. So I was thinking, okay, well, it's the weekend now. I can't stress about it. We're recording this on a Friday. We're going into the weekend. Then I'm only working Monday, Tuesday of next week. I took off the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and then I'm off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
That's awesome.
Yes, it worked out wonderful. Then I'm going to be back into work the following Monday for the rest of the week. So I'm trying, I can't predict it, but, we don't know if we're going to close down next Monday or the Monday after that or the Monday after that. So I'm just trying to take it a day at a time, but it's just a lot. But how are you with all this?
I mean, you kind of set me up on a tee to go off on something. No, it's actually really funny. I had like a mildly interesting thing happen to me today as I was arguing with my mother about not wanting to do anything for Thanksgiving, do like a family gathering or anything, because personally it feels very irresponsible, and I don't want to contribute to anything like that. And in the middle of arguing with my mom, who was telling me that she really wanted to go and wanted to do something, one of my family members called me to tell me that they had tested positive. So it looks like I won't be going to anything Thanksgiving related, thankfully. I won that fight. had to literally phone a friend.
But at what cost?
But at what cost, exactly. But I'm actually excited because I do still see my mother. My mother is the only person that I really still go and see. So I'm hopeful that we'll do like our own Thanksgiving. And to be completely honest, I hate Thanksgiving. I think it's a terrible holiday, and not only just like the holiday, but like I don't like any of the food. I'm not a Thanksgiving food person.
I've heard that before.
I mean, turkey, I like turkey, don't get me wrong, but I don't need a whole day just to eat turkey.
No, I feel that. People have made the argument like, okay, well, there's all this food for Thanksgiving that you don't eat any other time of the year. Why is that? Because it sucks.
Yeah.
Which I disagree with, but,
I've never liked any of the sides. Like whenever I was a kid growing up, my plate consisted of corn, turkey, and a biscuit, and that was it. That was all I wanted to eat every Thanksgiving. So I'm hopeful that this year, like I might be very careful, go to a butcher, get like a really nice steak, and cook like a steak dinner for me and my mom.
That would be nice.
Yeah, like some food I actually enjoy. Try to do something like just me and her, maybe watch some movies and make like an actual family holiday that's like safe and like not too ridiculous. That's my goal, at least for this one. And then hopefully I never have to I just don't want to eat Thanksgiving food. I don't want to go and do Thanksgiving anymore. I hate it.
When you start your own family traditions.
Oh my gosh, we're going to carve the steak. That's it. I'm just going to buy like a giant prime rib or something.
Oh my.
And do and say, if you bring stuffing to this Thanksgiving dinner, you're never coming back to this Thanksgiving.
You're not invited to the table.
You bring cranberry from a can, get out of here.
Cranberry has grown on me. I love cranberry sauce.
I love cranberries. I don't give a crap about the sauce. I'll drink cranberry juice until the cows come home. which is like probably in the springtime, I assume.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I'm not a Thanksgiving guy.
It's
I'm not a
valid.
food guy generally,
I
really.
know that.
I like very few foods. Dude, could you imagine Thanksgiving but with like tacos? Oh my gosh. Oh my
You're just
gosh.
describing a family meal now.
Yeah, that's all I want. I don't want some crazy fanfare
You can
associated
have
with
that
my
any
family meal.
night.
Yeah, I could.
Thanksgiving's the one night where you say, you know what, I'm going to eat
I'm gonna
stuffing
eat awful
and green bean
stuff.
casserole and corn
Oh
casserole,
god,
all
it
the
sounds so
casseroles.
gross. I've never looked at a casserole and went, "That looks appetizing. I want
Yo,
that."
green bean casserole slaps.
Nope. I refuse. Refuse to believe it.
Okay.
So, so Devin, what are we talking about on this typical before Thanksgiving Tuesday night?
So lately, you might have been seeing a lot of press coming out about Taylor from Rolling Stone. I feel like in the news, I've been seeing this about Rolling Stone with Taylor and then this. So we're going to dive in and we're going to talk about them. So, what's been going on lately? So, if you're questioning what Rolling Stone stuff, Devin, glad you asked. We have the Musicians on Musicians article with Taylor Swift and Paul McCartney, which I wasn't expecting that to come out. So, I was very excited. That was out on November 13th. And then there was the 500 Greatest Albums podcast featuring Taylor Swift's Red. And it was basically how Red changed everything for her on November 17th. So only, was it a 5-day, nope, 4-day
Four.
difference? I can do math.
I think it was really funny because I forget where I was. It might have been on the Taylor Swift subreddit that I saw like them post. Oh my gosh, Paul McCartney posted 13 dice as a Twitter status. Does this mean he's doing something with Taylor Swift? And I was like, oh, that's pretty cute. Maybe I should send that to Devin. And I was like, it's probably nothing. Like, what are the chances that Taylor Swift went to this like 60-year-old man or 70-year-old man, however old Paul McCartney is at this point, and told him, you have to tweet 13 dice. Everyone will understand.
Do you think that they planned that? Or
Oh,
I'm
100%.
assuming Taylor's tree like hit him up and he was like, hey, can you?
I'm sure it was definitely something because it's Taylor oriented,
She's,
100%.
yeah.
And I feel like Paul like respects her enough that he was like, oh, I'll humor her. I'll do that. Yeah.
Oh, so which one do you want to get into first?
I think we should start with let's go chronologically. Let's start with the Paul McCartney interview.
Okay. Number one, for those who don't know me, I am a huge Beatles fan. I love Paul McCartney. So the two of them together made my heart just beat out of my chest. I was like, look at them and look at their photos. Like, you look at that cover photo and her look, like she did her own hair and makeup, and all of the clothes she's wearing, they were styled by Stella McCartney and they were photographed by Mary McCartney. And it's just such a wholesome family gathering.
I am not a Beatles fan whatsoever, but I do have the utmost respect for Paul McCartney because I think of all of the Beatles, he is probably my favorite and probably the best after doing very little to no research on anyone in the band.
Well, only two of them are alive.
Only to well, it's and Paul and John are the ones that wrote a majority of the songs, I assume, for the Beatles
Yeah.
from the way that from what I could gather from reading the interview. But Paul, like, I know him from like Let It Be, the the Wings song that he has.
Well, he was in Wings.
He was in Wings, and then there's another song. I don't think it's Let It Be. Is it Let It Be? It was in the trailer for Marriage Story, and I don't remember what it is. I don't remember what that song is.
I didn't see the movie, so I wouldn't know.
It is a phenomenal movie, but crazy depressing.
So quick tangent, just because you mentioned that. My current boyfriend, who used to be my ex.
I like how you say my current boyfriend. Like, he might not be the final boyfriend, but
Well, no, because it's important to say in this context. So when we were dating before we broke up, we were at this like rocky stage in my head. I was like thinking about like, I don't know, like what I want to do here. Like I might need a break and I might need to break up. and he kept recommending we should watch Marriage Story.
Yeah,
And I
that'll
kept
break you up real
saying,
fast.
no, we should not. And he didn't understand why. And then we talked about it recently when we got back together. He's like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have watched that. And I'm like, we can watch it now. Like, I'm stable enough, but.
Oh, it was Maybe I'm Amazed.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I'm Amazed, which, like, after I saw that trailer with that song, I was like, okay, I have to download the song again and remember it because it was really good, and they
Yeah.
used it in a really good way there. You know, if you're really on the fence about breaking up or staying together, if your relationship can survive watching Marriage Story, they're the one. It is a harrowing experience, but it is so beautifully acted and so well done. I love ridiculously depressing, real life kind of movies, and that one it stood out to me. I saw it in I saw a trailer for it in the theater, and I was like, "All right, it comes out on Netflix this day. Put it in my calendar. We're watching it." But we're not talking about Marriage Story, even though we're talking about Paul McCartney, but tangentially. Mostly, we're talking about Taylor Swift. One thing that I noticed, and it was the first thing that jumped out at me, was I had no idea that Stella McCartney was Paul McCartney's daughter. I feel so.
Who has that last name?
McCartney is a common last name. Jesse McCartney is a person.
Oh.
Are you kidding me? There are
I honestly forgot
McCartneys.
Jesse McCartney existed. Sorry.
Most people did.
Jesse Stans.
But McCartney is a mildly popular last name. It's not like crazy, but like I just assumed Stella McCartney on her own. What's to say that Paul McCartney's lineage is also crazy? I mean, probably, yeah, it makes sense. Checks out. But no, I love this interview. I'm upset because I read it once and then I went to reread it a couple more times, and I can't get on Rolling Stone to read it anymore. And it made me sad. So I have the one memory to go off of reading.
I have some pictures that I took that I was going to post, but then I deleted them.
Tragic.
I mean, they're probably in my recent deleted. Okay, but can we talk about the first major thing that jumped out to me? I'm skimming through, or not skimming through, but I'm, analyzing it. And they talk about how when they're at parties, people will always ask them to perform things, and that they love being the person to, get people up and dancing and moving around. And Taylor
Drew Barrymore being like a big, enabler for that kind of stuff.
And Reese Witherspoon, I think, was also another one.
Oh, was it Reese Witherspoon?
It was okay. Reese.
Reese Witherspoon and Drew Barrymore are like more or less the same person in my head. I don't know why.
And just thinking about being at a party with all those people is crazy enough. But she was saying that she's sitting at a piano covering Best of You by Foo Fighters, like this slow down rendition. And Dave Grohl didn't realize it was that song until like halfway through. And oh my God, gosh. I need it so bad.
It's so funny. I feel like of all of the songs by Foo Fighters, people cover Best of You so much.
It's a classic.
It never resonated as a classic with me. Like, to me, a classic Foo Fighters song is like Everlong, Monkey Wrench. Like, I get, like, don't get me wrong, I think Best of You, I guess aside from Everlong, is probably better than any other. It's probably my second favorite Foo Fighters song. But like, I never thought it was that big of a song.
But just imagine Best of You as a piano cover and her Taylor singing Swift. It. Like,
well, have you heard her cover Vance Joy's Riptide?
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. Like, what she can do with just herself and a piano, and especially changing the tempo of a song. Like, the way that, and we'll get into this later, the way that she can just vamp lyrics and tempo and tone and stuff like that without like covering. Imagine what she can do with Best of You by Foo Fighters. And also just have you ever been to a party like that where like it just breaks into music?
No, but they're all musicians.
I want it so bad. Like, but I also don't want to be the white guy that pulls out a guitar, because I feel like that's not where I want to be.
I'm thinking like the first part of the song, like I've got another confession to make, I'm your fool. Like just her, that will live in my head forever.
Have you seen Prince cover it during the Super Bowl?
Mm-mm.
Oh, it's incredible. It's so good.
I'm sure it is. Prince is incredible.
That song, like, it's just, I think it's the world song, honestly. I think everyone should cover that song. Like, I just want to hear every single rendition possible of it, because it's got the emotion. It's got a million different ways you can give it out, and this is now suddenly a Foo Fighters
Well, but to the
podcast.
point that Dave Grohl didn't even recognize his own song. Like, how drastically did she change it? The tempo, the style, like, I need it. I need it.
I mean, I don't think Vance Joy would have recognized Taylor's rendition of Riptide. If you haven't heard it, listeners, if
Yeah.
you haven't heard it, it's on BBC Radio 1 on YouTube. You can watch a video of her playing it. And, like, I think it's better than the original version. Like, hands down, like, no contest.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine, like, especially when you get, like, towards the middle, I don't know how, like, when you're in a party setting, I don't think she was like,
the best, the best.
like, you just, is someone taking the pain, the feel?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that part where you just get, like, it's a bridge. It's a ranting bridge. Could you imagine?
I can't. I need it so bad. All
So
right.
Taylor, please, I know you're listening. Please put out your cover of Foo Fighters' Best of You while re-recording your entire discography.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Taylor Swift and Dave Grohl being in the same room alone, like, I want something to come out of that. Mrs. collaborates with every person under the sun. How have you not collaborated with Dave Grohl yet? Please, on something, on anything.
Even a collaboration between her and Paul McCartney.
That, I think that's more likely than her and
I
Dave
would love
Grohl,
to see that
unfortunately.
on the re-records.
Yeah, I would love to see her just pull in a slew of random superstars, kind of like she does on her tours, where, like,
Mm-hmm.
every tour, every single stop, she has a different person come in. I would love to see her just reaching out and, like, bringing all of these celebrities in to do, like, something with her.
Or even just, I don't need her songs. Like, I love her songs the way they are. If she put out an album of all, like, of her covering other people's songs with them on it, I would die happy.
It's ridiculous how many things Taylor can do that would make us die happy.
Yeah.
It's amazing the pull this
Doesn't
woman
take a
has in
lot.
our lives. It does not take a lot at all. One thing that you pointed out that I thought was a really good point is her so casually talking about writing under pseudonyms. Because I think Paul said he did it too. He did it as, like, Firewalker or the Fireman or something.
Yeah.
I forget exactly what he went by, but, like, yeah, Taylor had Niels Bjorn,
Something like that. Yeah.
that she wrote "This Is What You Came For" under, and, like, apparently there's some vocals of her on that song that I didn't know.
I feel like I've told you this before.
You definitely have. Most things you have.
Yeah. So she picked out that name because they're the two most common names in Swedish. But
That's so funny, because I have one of my favorite really bad books that I grew up reading is written by a guy named a pseudonym David Wong, because those are the two most common names in the world. The first name is David and second name is Wong. But it also reminded me of William Bowery, the mystery writer on folklore, which I then realized after our last episode banter is probably not Lord.
Nope.
I can't imagine Lord was anywhere near this project. Sadly.
Yeah. Oh, so I would just like to point out, to our defense, a quote from Sir Paul McCartney himself. He goes, "Peace, I like that one."
We're great. We picked out the best song on the album easily. Approved by a Beatle. Just so you know, it's my number one song on the album. I think it's Devon's number 2. So I'm technically have slightly better taste than Devon does. But even though I don't like the Beatles, but no, that's exactly how I imagine, like, my grandmother would say something like that too. Like, she would just be like, she just randomly go, "Oh, that song, I like that one."
Yeah. What's that song? Peace, I like that one.
I love, like, hearing about it though, because, like, I think one of the things I want out of this album more than anything else is I want to hear her talk about it. Like, I'm glad we're getting these interviews and stuff, but it feels like we're getting, like, bits and pieces about this album and this song when I just want to tell all.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want everything about it. But like she goes off and says like that it's her personal song. Like I think you wrote down, she quoted specifically, "Will it ever be enough if I can never fully achieve the normalcy that we both crave?" Talking about her relationship with Joe and like how she's feeling about it and like how the song makes her feel and like how she feels about her relationship. And then Paul starts talking to her about her relationship with Joe and like, is he okay with like this kind of stuff? Is he aware of this stuff that's going on? And like, this song, that song, like it's just so crazy that like to point out like all of the stuff from, we're gonna go crazy in that song breakdown.
It's going to be a two-parter. It's going to be the
I hope so.
normal breakdown, and it's going to be the in
The
between
lyrics.
between the lines. Yeah.
Definitely, and I'm so excited for that.
Mm-hmm. Also, a cool thing about Paul McCartney is I just love the normalcy of his life. The fact that he's like, yeah, I went trick or treating with my kids. Like, I wore a mask, and if my friends and my kids had their friends over, they'd be like, oh, cool, and then just completely
They did
ignore
not
him.
care.
And then
Did
he would
not
just go
care
in the
about
other
him.
room and do whatever.
Could you imagine if your kids went on a play date and they ended up going to Paul McCartney's house and they did not care? Like, and they came home, we're like, where did you go, honey? Oh, we went to so and so McCartney's house. McCartney. Oh, that's an interesting last name. Yeah, her dad's famous or something. My kids. I remember, I'll never forget. I went to a 76ers game when I was in like mid or elementary school. And
Mm-hmm.
my mom like pointed out like the box next to us, Bon Jovi was in it.
Mm.
And she talks to like the guy she was dating at the time. I was like, hey, there's Bon Jovi. And like our entire box, who did not recognize him, did not know, like all just started turning around looking. My mom was like, the guy next to me hung up his phone and said, sorry, hon, I gotta go. Bon Jovi's next to us. And I didn't know who he was. I had no idea who this man was. My mom just said, take your Sixers ticket and go ask him to sign it. And this is before camera phone, so I don't have a picture of it, but I do have a signed 76. But it's that exact thing of like, my mom's like, you don't know who Bon Jovi is, and we saw him, and you saw him, and you didn't respect that he was there.
It's like,
I
hi,
also love
Mr. Jovi.
I also love, like he said, like specifically, he's like, I don't live in like this crazy house.
Mm-hmm.
I like that he was like, I don't want to have like what do you say, like help or a staff or something if I want to walk around naked, which Jesus Christ, I want to be able to. But I love that, like he's just like, I live in a normal cottage kind of farm style house, and like I don't really do anything crazy or lavish. And then Taylor's over here living in the biggest house possible in Rhode Island.
Honestly, though, I feel like I can see a lot of similarities in their futures, because she's at this
Definitely.
point where I think she's achieved a lot of fame, and she's just kind of like, all right, well, now I want to go live in a lonely little cottage on the hills or whatever. And that's where he's at in his life and his stage. Like, he was in the most famous group in the world. He was a Beatle.
Still is.
Beatlemania, like it's, and that's Taylor Swift has a very similar sized fan base. Like, it's just, and worldwide recognition. You're at this point where, what else do you need? You just need some peace.
The number of accolades that Taylor has that are only on the echelon that the Beatles have is astronomical. So I don't think it is an issue or argumentative to say Taylor Swift is probably the Beatles of our time, or at least as close as we're gonna see right now to it, just based on accolades alone.
I believe that.
But I like, you also pointed out that
a quote by her
that says, if there's chaos everywhere, why don't I just use the damn word I want to use in the song? And I love how casually she's been cursing lately. Like, she is just I feels like she's trying to normalize that. Like, it feels like she's like, all right, look, I always was so reticent to use language and blah blah blah, and now like it seems like in almost every medium she's given a voice, she is normalizing that, yes, I am Taylor Swift, and I am a human being, and I curse.
And she's 30 or 30 something.
30. She turns 33 this year.
Yeah,
she's allowed to curse. My God. But I love that she's getting more like and I hate using big words, but you know what? If I want to use the damn word I want to use, just being more bombastic about it and just
Mm-hmm.
like using it more. I got yelled at work because I sent an email with the word phraseology in it. my boss sent me like screenshots, like slowly zooming in, and he just said, "You mean language?" And I was like, "No, I mean phraseology." And I sent him the definition of it, and I was like, "This works better than language does in this context. Sit your ass down."
Oh
Uh,
my.
um but no, like I love that she's doing that, and you can see like she's actually from here she's saying like if I want to use a big crazy word, I'm going to.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that's kind of why we got all of those memes about Taylor Swift, um like using all of these dictionary words and like start the folklore starter pack, a glass of bread and a dictionary, like all that stuff. And she lists off words, elegies, epiphany, divorcee, which I think is so interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and kaleidoscope. So and she used all of those words in a lot of her lyrics. She used romantic, how all these elegies eulogize me, in lakes, which somehow made that word so poetic.
Mm-hmm.
Only 20 minutes to sleep, but you dream of some epiphany, an epiphany, duh. And the town said, how did a middle-class divorcee do it? And then kaleidoscope of loud heartbeats under coats and welcome to New York. One of the things I think is the most interesting here is just divorcee, because that does, as weird as it is, that sounds like such a Taylor Swift word.
Mm-hmm. And then she also starts going off into her creative outlets, and she's saying that she's been, knitting and crocheting and embroidering a lot lately. She made this flying squirrel stuffed animal for a friend. And I'm just picturing those cute little animals that you like knit. And like that's what she sent over. And I love that. She
I wish I thought about it. My
Mhm.
cat has flying stuffed animal toys,
Oh.
and they're her favorite toy. I have like 3 of them because I keep having to rebuy them because she hides them, and then I'll
Aw.
find them. So I have 3 of them just lying around the house.
She made a teddy bear, sent that to another, and then silk baby blankets with embroidery on them, which we've seen
Mm.
sent out. And then she also paints, and Paul McCartney's like, "Oh, you do watercolors?" And she's like, "I mean, if I do watercolors, I do flowers," but she's been mostly painting acrylic and oil, like landscaping, and then like lonely little cottages on a hill, which she released a puzzle in her Christmas merch. And
Hmm.
I really think that's something she painted, which kind
I
of
think
makes
so
me want
too.
it more.
It was in the Cardigan music video. It was like one
Mm-hmm.
of the art in the back. But like I swear, if she puts out like prints or something, like I 100% would buy that, frame it, and put it on a wall,
Mm-hmm.
hands down.
Yeah.
Like I would kill for some Taylor Swift artwork. The podcast about a podcast.
Wow.
We're 3 levels
Podcastception.
deep. We're 3 levels deep.
So I have you wrote down something.
Yeah, I did. I wrote down a
Please
lot of
explain it.
stuff. All right. So number one, I like, so the podcast starts with everything has changed, like the intro chords to it, which I think is interesting. The podcast is titled "How Red Changed Everything," fitting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but she literally starts the podcast dropping a curse word.
Does she?
Um, she says the S word in it. Yeah.
Oh.
Like, and I'm gonna try to keep everything as clean as possible, but like, yeah, basically the way they start the podcast is they take like a blurb from later in the interview and just chuck it right in the beginning.
Hmm.
But I'm sure they had to say, hey, is it okay if we use this blurb real fast, especially because it has her cursing? So we
Mm-hmm.
hear her say the S word twice in the interview, by hearing that repeated. But I forget exactly the line. I didn't write it down, but yeah, she says something and says the S word right in the beginning of the episode, which I think is like I said, I think it's just leading credence. Like she wants the world to be okay and familiar with the fact that she is now a cursing artist, which wasn't the case before. And
Yeah.
that for me specifically gives me a lot of hope for a lot of things going forward. I'm excited to see more explicit tags on her albums in the future, because I feel like she with folklore dropping f-bombs, she is not going to shy away from it anymore. I don't think she's going to do it gratuitously, but I think she's going to employ what she said in the Paul McCartney interview, where she says, um if I'm just going to use the damn word I want to use in the song. And I think a lot of times in previous songs, which we've learned from this interview, she wanted to use the F word because it's a very emotional word and it perfectly encapsulates a feeling in a moment.
Mhm.
And she couldn't because that was off brand for her. But I
Yeah.
think she's steadily trying to put cursing into her brand a little bit to open that up for her future songwriting, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. So, just in general, so we're talking about Red. Red was ranked 99 on the list. Out of 500 albums, she made the top 100. And it was the only, besides, that was the only one in the top 100. The only other album to be featured on the list at all was 1989 at 393.
Yeah, so I went through, I checked some of the list. There were a lot of people on that list that I don't really know, which just really solidifies that my taste in music probably isn't the best, even though I am great by putting Peace, Paul McCartney's favorite song, at number one. But the quick blurb about 1989 being on the list was said Swift set out to make a blatant blatant pop music on 1989, and came up with a love letter to, I don't know either of these bands, Pet Shop Boys and Eurythmics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know any of
Eurythmics was
those.
Sweet Dreams Are Made of This.
No
Mm-hmm.
way.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, I can see that for 1989 then, definitely. And she so she goes with like Manic Rush, Snares of Blank Space, and Bad Blood, ends with the electric chill, love that, of Clean. Um Goes into mentioning a bunch of other things, but two things like about the placement of 1989, I kind of skimmed where it was above and below in relation to like not like the one right above it and right below it, but like in relation to like pop music or like recognizable albums. So it is above Billie Eilish's When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go?
Which is a
But it is,
fantastic album.
which I haven't heard all the way through, because I'm just not a great big Billie Eilish fan. But it's behind Mariah Carey's The Emancipation of Mimi, which I
Mm.
have literally never heard of. Um,
Yeah, I'd have to look at the track list. I'm not
I
familiar.
I don't know many Mariah Carey songs that much, so I'm not surprised of it. But she is a huge pop icon, so I'm fine with Taylor Swift's 1989 being behind it, even though my initial bias is this album should also be in the top 100. Um, you said no, she was surprised at Red being so high on the list, though.
She was surprised that it was higher, like the highest one on the list. And when they told her it was in the top 100, she was genuinely shocked. But she said, I'm glad that it's this one.
Yeah, I agree. So they go on to talk about Taylor Swift's Red. They said Taylor Swift shocked the world with her fourth album, breaking away from country music to make a record that recalled classics by the Beatles and Prince in a way that pulled across from pop and rock landscape and transformed every sound it touched. From We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together being an electro twang to I Knew You Were Trouble with dubstep, with banjos, dusty guitars, talk box. Everything you could possibly imagine is on this album. But the real news was Taylor Swift's songwriting in high points like the astonishing All Too Well, as a vivid post-breakup remembrance as any artist has produced. To put some perspective into where it ranked at 99, this is not pop, but I figured both of these albums at least stood out to me. It was ahead of Led Zeppelin's title album, the Led Zeppelin 1, which to me is insane.
Yeah.
And it's also ahead of Rolling Stone's Sticky Fingers, which is huge. Also for me, that like I didn't really realize it's ahead of an album by the band, which I didn't think the band was that big, and I thought that was interesting. And it's also ahead of Kanye West's Late Registration. So yeah,
Is Kanye also on that list higher? Did you
yeah, he
look or
is. Yeah, he is.
that's what Well,
My Dark Twisted Fantasy is like crazy high, which
yeah.
I kind of give him credit for. Yeah, like
Mhm.
that album is absolutely insane. But it is just behind Drake's Take Care, which seems odd to me.
Yeah.
And also behind Beyonce's self-titled album, also behind Beyonce's Lemonade, which is like I think in the 30s.
Yeah.
Which I still don't agree with entirely.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
but
think I would agree with
I've been
that.
fighting that fight for a long time.
Yeah. So she talks about, the reason why she's glad it was Red is because Red is the reason 1989 exists. That was that pop transition. She calls it her Jason Pollock album, where she's just throwing colors to the wall to see what stuck in terms of genre, and I love that. She's like, "Well, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna throw rock to the wall. I'm gonna throw dubstep. I'm gonna do this and this," and it's just her experimentation album, to the point where, because she saw the success of what these songs could do and she realized she doesn't have to stay in this country barrier, that's the reason why 1989 was able to flourish the way it did.
Hey, Devin.
What is that face?
I really love you, but please tell me you know that the painter is not named Jason Pollock. It's Jackson Pollock.
Jackson Pollock. I just wrote it down wrong.
But then I thought that's what you did, and I thought, oh, she's gonna correct herself before she says it, and then you just like boisterously went with Jason Pollock, and I was like, oh no.
You just let me go on.
I let you. Well, I didn't want to interrupt to correct you. I wanted to wait for you to finish your thought and then correct you.
Yikes. Yeah, Jackson Pollock. That sounds a lot more right. Okay.
The famous painter for just throwing paint everywhere on a canvas and calling it art, making children in elementary school proud everywhere.
Yeah, and the main complaint she says that she got is that the album wasn't cohesive. Like, there's just no general like theme
Flow.
to it, and it just seems like she's throwing colors to the wall. But it represents this true messiness of a breakup. And she goes on to say that Red is her true breakup album. Like, there's no other album that is completely about breakup and heartbreak. There's other albums that have elements of it here and there, but Red was that for her.
Which I think is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We vaguely texted about this. I mean, I think I want to dive as deep as possible into that idea, because before she said it, it was something I never realized, never like recognized. To me, Taylor has always been, at least pre 1989, Taylor has always been a breakup song machine. Probably a lot of that, at least my thought of that, has been influenced by the media and the way that they portray her.
Mm-hmm.
But I never thought of I thought Speak Now was a very breakup intensive album. Fearless, a little bit less so, but I thought Speak Now was like probably the biggest breakup album. And to hear the woman herself say that Red was, I took a step back, and I was like, and I thought about it. I do think I don't want to say I do think I agree. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever she says is gospel. But it was just something that kind of like threw me for a loop. I didn't think about it, and it wasn't until she said it that it clicked for me. But the next thing that she started talking about was that the first song she wrote for the album were her quote unquote Nashville songs.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of her normal sound, like her very Speak Now, fearless, self-titled sounding songs, State of Grace, Stay, 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 All Too Well, done with Nathan Chapman, who produced self-titled Fearless and Speak Now. I believe he went on to produce 1989, and it might still be with her to this day. But he also worked with a lot like Shania Twain, Keith Urban. Like he was a very big country music producer. So he was like, he had his footprints all over those country songs that Max Martin didn't really have a big hand in initially.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the first ones that she wrote. All Too Well might have been, I think she mentioned being the very first song for this album, which I think is incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then she goes on to say that I Knew You Were Trouble was initially this slow ballad called Trouble. And oh my, I want to hear that.
I like how we like love hearing slowed down songs of Taylor. Like that's like
I just love hearing different variations of her songs. Like the fact that I Knew You Were Trouble, which is this classic dubstep, like this was that song. That's what it was known for. Was originally this slow ballad. Like what would it have been like if she had never released that version and she just released a slowed down song called Trouble?
I think it's definitely indicative. She mentions in this podcast that Not only is this the album where she became really close friends with Ed Sheeran, but it brought us the beginning of the collaborations with Max Martin, who would heavily influence 1989, but
Mhm.
like made his footprint very clear on this album with I Knew You Were Trouble. And I knew, for me specifically, I Knew You Were Trouble holds a very special place in my heart. It's still not my favorite song. I definitely played it out like crazy when it
Mm.
came out. But I remember when she was promoting the album, October-ish 2012, I believe it was 2012, 2014.
Mm. I want to say
It was
20.
2012. It was 2012. It was 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was my freshman year in college. Yeah, and that's when I was really getting into it. But she was doing a promotion where starting at like 4 weeks before the album would come out, she started dropping songs. She dropped Begin Again, then Red, and then the third song that she dropped on the third week was I Knew You Were Trouble. And for me, it was like I remember vividly waiting, refreshing my computer for when that song would come up so I could download it for when I could actually get it. And I remember like a snapshot. I was in my room at the time. I was playing a video game called Dishonored on my Xbox 360, and this song comes up, and I'm like, all right, sweet, play. And like I hear the dubstep for the first time, and it was like the height of dubstep. I was not a dubstep listener,
Hmm.
but it was like I knew it when I heard it, and I was like this like crazy Grinch smile came on my face, and I was just like, did Taylor Swift just put dubstep in her music? Like just like going nuts about it. And like, especially because you think of the first songs that she dropped, We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together, a very fearless
Hmm.
style song. Red, just a very country ballad. Begin Again, just like a very muted kind of speak now kind of song. And then I Knew Your Trouble was this just broke the mold and shattered it and told everyone this is not the Taylor that you got in the last two albums. You are getting something
Hmm.
new. You are getting something different. And it it stuck out to me. And I swear, just like I was talking to Devon about this the other day, how like I have the tendency to hear a new song that I like and just hit that repeat one button and just listen to it over and over and over again. And I remember like my family must have gotten so sick of me that night because that thing was on repeat while I was playing video games all night. I just did not stop listening to it. It was my favorite song on the album before the full album came out. Hands down, it was incredible.
So speaking of favorite song before the album came out, let's talk about All Too Well.
Of course. We'd be remiss if we didn't.
So the fact that All Too Well was the first song written with 7 extra verses at a runtime of 10 minutes that eventually Liz Rose helped her cut down. And the version included the F word.
So, a couple of things for this. Number one, I love that the length of All Too Well's like uncut version has just been internetified
Mm-hmm.
where like it goes from 20 minutes, 14 minutes, 10 minutes, like it's
Eight
just like
minutes.
8 minutes. Like there's a million different runtimes for this song like circulating on the internet. Taylor Swift herself has said 10, so I'm gonna go with 10. Um but I think like you said, this version included the F word. One, she doesn't say that she only said it once. And I sent Devin a really great meme that I can't share
I
on this
walked through
podcast
the
because
effing door with you. The air was effing cold.
like it was
Something
just
about
every
it.
other word because I knew thought about it all too
I'm
effing
trying to
well.
think of where in the song she would.
It,
It
it
could
could
fit
have. I mean,
anywhere.
it could fit anywhere. It might have been in a cut verse. I think it.
Mm,
I think it was interspersed throughout the song because as she tells the story about how she wrote it, being she just vamped like playing the same four chords over, just vamped this record out, or this song out. It could have been. She probably was just like sprinkled through everything because she like they. I think Mama Swift once said that by the time she got to "You Call Me Up Again" just to break me like a promise, she's like tears soaked. So this is an emotional performance that she's doing. So she's probably letting it fly every other word. And actually, if I can look it up right here, because I have it saved. Because Go To All Too Well is one of my favorite songs to play on guitar. The four chords I'm almost certain she was playing was G, D, E minor, C.
mm.
Because that's how well at least that's how I play it with the fifth capo. But yeah, like she was just going through and doing this. I can't get over the fact that she ad-libbed the greatest song she's ever written. Like, of course she did. We're unworthy to be like fans. We're unworthy to be around this musician or talk about it or just listen. Like, she's just too good for anything. But like, it's just so nuts how talented this woman is, that she didn't spend time writing this. She didn't sit down. She has a notebook, and I'm sure she spent time after like the fact. But like, she wrote this in 2010. So there was a story that was going around on Tumblr that I didn't realize until recently. Someone posted it that corroborates the story that Taylor Swift told. It was heavily debated at the time due to like timelines and things like that, that the story about All Too Well wasn't real, but Taylor Swift recounts it, and it's almost word for word, beat for beat. But it says that the song was written around 2010 on the Fearless tour. As the same year that Speak Now came out, so she was just wrapping up Speak Now. Just wrapping up the Fearless tour. Speak Now came out in October 2010.
Mm-hmm.
2 full years before Red. So this song was recorded before Red came out, and I imagine she did rewrites and everything on it. And Taylor and Jake dated from October 2010 to January 2011, so the timeline does work for that. And she also says, a quote from her in this interview is, "It's 10 minutes long, so I definitely have to pare it down. Screw you, Taylor. No, you don't. You live your life the way you want to live. You do not need to conform to regular song lengths. Get out of here. Give us the 10-minute version."
I just can't imagine the pure emotion and just the sheer talent you have to just some of the lyrics she had. And I'm sure, I mean, but I don't know. I'm thinking.
She said, she's like, I walked
through the door with you.
The air was cold. Like she stuck, like, and it's the same thing of like when we did like our reaction to Lover, when we did in like our third or fourth or very early episode, we watched, like, there was an interview she did with it, and she puts out like this voice recording of her doing Lover, and it's like the melody's exactly the same, the lyrics are all there. Like, this woman can just write a song on the fly.
It's gross how talented she is. I can't get over it. Like,
because the thing is like, I don't know, like, we early in quarantine we bonded over the show Dave about Lil Dicky, and the end of that show, he's just freestyling, and Lil Dicky has an amazing like freestyle, and I think freestyling is one of the coolest and most impressive things you can possibly do. But at the end of the day, freestyle is you're ending a thing on a word, and you have to find a word that rhymes with it to go to the next one. There's nothing about pacing. There is not, like, you don't really have to worry about pacing. You don't have to worry about melody. You don't have to worry about all this stuff. And Taylor's just out here doing that, and there's a reason most freestyles don't make their way into a regular song. This song not only made its way into a regular song, but made its way into the annals of history, being one of the best songs ever. Rolling Stone has it as their #1 Taylor Swift song. If you Google, and I made this point to a bunch of friends, if you Google best Taylor Swift song, every single article will tell you All Too Well, unless you're BuzzFeed and you're wrong.
that was such a bad article. I'm sorry.
I said an article to Devon that was like, someone rated every Taylor Swift song, and like
just a random Swiftie.
Ready for It was like in the bottom 140, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be a great one. And I think #1 was what, like Fearless or something. And I was like, this is a joke. If you're a Taylor Swift fan and your #1 is an All Too Well, I'm not going to gatekeep. You could still be a Taylor Swift fan, but
here's the thing.
You're not in the majority here.
Here's the thing. All Too Well doesn't have to be your #1 song. I think it has to be in your top 10.
100% has to be in your top 10.
Yeah.
I think that and Enchanted are both like those two upper echelon songs that I think is almost unanimous among Swifties. Those are like, and I mean, that's my one and my #2. And so I feel a little bit good that I'm like, I feel justified, I guess. But no, I think the other thing though too, like I said, one thing I'm very interested in is that in that interview with Paul, he mentioned how much he loathes sharing a 3-minute song. Like he talked about his songwriting process and writing Paul McCartney 3, and that he would go to the studio, he would drive down to the studio with like 2 people, do some stuff, like fiddle around, make a song, make some tracks or whatever, record it, come home to his wife and kids, and while they're like making dinner or something, he'd go, hey, so here's what I did today, and he would play it. He goes, and I would hate to play a 3-minute song because it's over so quickly. No one, it just doesn't feel good. And he waxed poetic about an 8-minute monster song that he just put out, and he was like how much he loved showing that off and how much he loved having like this really long track. And I really hope that it made Taylor rethink All Too Well. I feel like with how in tune she is with her fans, I think there is no way we don't one day get a 10-minute version of All Too Well. I can't imagine. Like, the thing is even if she has the argument, well, guys, you don't know what you want, it's not as good as you think, we don't care. We really don't. Like, we just want to hear it more, and we love you, and we're not going to say, we're never going to be like, Taylor, you should have never put this out. We are never going to say that. We are never ever getting back to say that. No. But I hope that at least gave her another nudge in the direction to put out a 10-minute version, and especially now that she is able to use the F word. I think we're getting this perfect storm of things that are allowing her to put out this unedited, or not even unedited, like just finalized 10-minute version. Because like you said, they recorded it, and I'm sure she has it somewhere, the original recording. So it's not like she lost any pieces of it. She has the original lyrics she could have had. She has notes of them because they were in the Lover Deluxe editions. So I think the F word is the only thing that's like was holding her back in the past, and I think that's gone too. So I think with her re-recording, she's gonna drop an album, either whether it's Red remastered or however she decides to do it. We're going to get this All Too Well extended version, and I think that's the main takeaway from this thing.
Yeah. So I didn't listen to the rest of the interview when they were just talking about it, just because I just wanted to listen to Taylor.
Not
but
a
you
true
did.
fan.
But you
Not
did.
A true fan.
So tell me.
Okay. So if you were like Devon and you only listened to the 12 minutes of Taylor Swift, I would, and you, Devon, I would recommend going back and listening to the other, because it's really cool to hear people who have been following and covering Taylor Swift and big fans. I mean, if you like us sitting here and gushing over Taylor Swift, there's no reason you wouldn't like that. And I hate to like point you in the direction of another podcast, but they only have the one episode about her. Yeah. We have 33 now. So go listen to that, hear what they have to say, because like we're not music journalists. We are just huge fans. I mean, I would love to write about Taylor, but I have
can't
other
write.
jobs. I can write, but I have other jobs. But they went through and they asked like a couple of questions that I thought that were really interesting. So I wanted to pose these questions to you and kind of talk through them. So number one, are you surprised that this album is the one that's the highest on the list?
Honestly, no. And I might be a little biased just because of having heard the podcast and like listening to their reasons behind it. But this was really her like big transitional album. This was the album that led to the conceptualization of her other albums, and this made her realize, like, after Speak Now, she could have just said, all right, it's a country life for me, and only did that. But Red was the album that made her, I don't know if it was like believe in herself more or just realize her potential, and that just skyrocketed everything we've seen since, I personally believe.
But I will say, to play devil's advocate, even though I 100% agree with you, this list, this 500 greatest album of all time, is not a list of 500 albums that spawned amazing careers. It's 500 greatest albums of all time. So if her career had stopped after Red, do you think, or just not disregarding what Red did for her as a career, do you think this album deserves to be the highest on there?
I mean, Red is my favorite album by her, so I would agree.
It is. Red was considered my favorite album by her for a very long time until relatively recently, where I think Speak Now overtook
Mm-hmm.
it. And I have all of them right there, all of my favorite Taylor Swift records. Aside from Fearless is still up there. But no, I think I do think this is a big one, but I think it is surprising that I don't think it's surprising 1989 was the only other one that made it up there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a case could be made for 1989 above Red, just because 1989 being the pop masterpiece that it was, and
Yeah.
the thing that really brought Taylor fans who weren't fans of Taylor, like you see, if you look at a graph of like people who are fans of Taylor Swift over time, and you just see 2006, all right, a little bit, 2008, a little bit more, 2010, a lot more, 2012, a lot more, 2014,
Mm-hmm.
that number goes off the charts, because that is when she just reached this massive audience,
Yeah.
and that's when she pulled in a majority of her fans to this day and like brought her into her other ones. So I can see an argument for 1989, but I still think Red,
Mm-hmm.
just the stuff that she did, she was at her peak in everything. She had the best of every world she's going to have. I think if you put all of her albums in a on the floor, you can draw a yarn from Red to every single thing she's done before and since.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you can do that. Like, I don't think you can look at Fearless and go, all right, well, Fearless, I can understand how she got to 1989 from here. Like there's just not
Mm-hmm.
a connector between them, but I think Red connects everything. And I think one of the things that they said in the podcast was, this is Taylor Swift doing the every song in here is the best version of Taylor Swift doing that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm inclined to agree with that. The next question, which I think is really interesting, is: do you think that if they did this list later in the year, that Folklore would have made it on it?
I think it would have made the top 500. I don't think it would have been higher than Red.
That was going to be my follow up. Was, do you think it
Mm-hmm.
would be higher than Red? I'm. I think I could go either way on this. I'm not sure that I think Folklore is a better album than Red. Mostly because, one, there's recency bias that I'm dealing with, but there's
Mm-hmm.
also burnout on Folklore that I'm dealing with right now too. So I don't know if I'd be able to truly say it until 2030, probably. Maybe hopefully sooner, 2025 or something like that.
Here's the thing. I mean, I personally, I think Folklore is a better album than 1989, but
Yeah.
I think 1989 was like her pop magnum opus, whatever. And I
Her
think
Jason Pollock.
Jason Paul. But I think Folklore, it's the first album she's done with no marketing, just the
Mm-hmm.
drop, like it's her lemonade.
It's her lemonade. Yep, that's
Yeah.
the perfect way to say it. Yeah.
And I think
And
that it was so like critically well acclaimed, and the streams are astronomical. I think it deserves to be top 500. I just don't know where it would fall.
I agree. I think for that exact reason, like Red was Taylor Swift's most critically acclaimed album before she even had the fan base of 1989. And
Mm-hmm.
now that she has the fan base of 1989, it's even crazier. So I think there's no way Folklore doesn't make it, especially with Beyonce's Lemonade making it that high.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like there's something about, like, if scrolling through those lists, you get a lot of 1970s, 1980s classic rock albums that are like concept albums and things like that, that are like lyrically crazy. I think this album fits that mold really well. It is lyrically insane. Her writing is
Mm-hmm.
the sharpest it's been in years. I think it's definitely on there. And that's what they said. Like they said Red specifically. I added this in there. Red is definitely like her Swiss Army knife album. Like it has literally bits and pieces of everything she's ever done, which I think is indicative of why it's so high. And like, it is, again, it's her most critically acclaimed album. It was my favorite album for the longest time. If I'm ever trying to get anyone into Taylor Swift, I will give them Red over anything
Mm-hmm.
else, because I think it's indicative. It will give you bits and pieces of everything she is as a songwriter.
And I think that you can find at least one song on Red for
Oh yeah,
everyone.
for every single person. And it's so funny too. Like I remember I had a friend who's very into alternative music, does not like pop at all, cannot stand it. And I gave him Red. And the first song he came out with me, he was like, "How do you hate U2?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just don't really care about U2. What are you talking about?" We're talking about Red here. And he goes, "You listen to State of Grace and you don't like U2? Like this is the most 80s ballad, like 80s rock ballad song in the world. It's so U2." And I was like, "So is that your favorite song on the album?" He goes, "By far." He looked at me, he's like, "This is like a perfect song. It is amazing."
Mhm.
And I was like, and he was like, "You're right. Like this album, I don't like Taylor Swift. I don't like pop, blah, blah, blah. But this album is up there for me. Like it's really good." So I think it transcends genre. And they also brought up another point later on that like it was so pointed and so poignant. They noted that like they asked why is there an apprehension to admit that Taylor Swift is good? Because we fight this fight every day, or at least I don't know if
Mhm.
you do, I do, where people always say, "Oh, you like Taylor Swift? She's not good," or like she's whatever, she's just a pop sellout, blah blah blah. Like they asked like, "Why do you think that is?" And a lot of like the first thing he was like, "Well, sexism, obviously," and I'm like, "Yeah, I
Mhm.
can see that." Um, but they also pointed to the reason that, oh well, teen girls like her, so they can't be wrong. Like she can't be good. Like look at her audience base. Like it's a majority teen women, teen girls, blah blah blah. And they're like completely neglecting the fact that teen girls went crazy over the Beatles. The Beatles were the first teen girl crazed band in the
Beatlemania.
world.
Mhm.
Beatlemania, like it was the biggest thing. Rolling Stones. My mom, as a teen girl, was nuts over the Rolling Stones. Elton
Mhm.
John, Led Zeppelin, like all of these critically acclaimed bands proclaimed the best bands in the world. We're giant fans of like teen girls. Like teen
Mhm.
girls really do dictate the way music goes.
I could have a whole episode about that statement in general because teen girls are so overlooked, but that will be your core audience who will spend thousands of dollars on you and will show up and will promote you. Like if you have teenage girls as your fan base, like you're set.
Mm-hmm. But like I can see like people like looking to that and be like, well, how can you say that this is like a musical?
Hmm.
Like they're how are they gifted? You can like, oh, you could just put anything together and teenage girls will fall in love with it. But it's not true.
Mm-mm.
Number one, but there's also a difference. Like teenage girls, yeah, they'll listen to whatever, but like they won't stick with it unless there's something there.
Hmm.
And the fact that Taylor has garnered this crazy following that I think rivals any other musician's following really shows that like she is special, and her music transcends that. And I do think in the 50s, the 2050s, we're going to be talking about how Taylor Swift is the Beatles of this generation. When I undoubtedly I have that thought.
Exactly. And the fact that she's retained this audience, if not grew it substantially for all these years now. Like, try to think of another artist who has garnered that big of a reputation
For
and
14
fan
years.
base for 14 years
14 years.
and has
Think
only
of
grown.
think of other musicians or artists from 2006, and which ones do you still follow to this day or that have that big of a following? The only other ones I can think of are Britney Spears, who
Beyonce.
has, and Beyonce, who Britney Spears has not put out anything in forever
Hmm.
or anything of note, in my opinion. There are crazy Britney stans, and I respect them. I was a Britney stan as a kid when Oops, I Did It Again came out. I cried when I put the CD not in the case in my backpack and it broke in kindergarten. Traumatic. Um, but Beyonce, the same. She is still putting out great things. She's still following, but she has not had the one. She, she has had the closest to the critical accolades that Taylor Swift has. I think Beyonce and Taylor Swift are the closest to each other in terms of star power and everything like that. But I still like Taylor Swift's still putting out like ridiculous albums. I don't know when the last time Beyonce put something out was. I don't. I want
Well,
to
I mean,
say it's Lemonade, but I can't
her
be
and Jay-Z
sure.
put out that
That's right.
album together.
But I don't know. Like Taylor Swift is regularly releasing albums every 2 to 3 years, and each album is breaking records, shattering records.
I'd say not since, maybe since 2006. I don't know how long he's been around, but not to the critical acclaim standard, but like someone like Justin Bieber, who had that giant fan base. But if anything, I would say, I don't know if his fan base has increased. If
No,
any, I
I
think
think
it's been,
I was a Bieber or a believer for a short time after I forget what the album's called, but when Sorry came out, because that album was
honestly, I love his
fire.
discography. I think he hasn't put out a bad song since Yummy, and then just
Yummy, I heard was terrible.
and the repetitiveness of Baby. I think all of his
Yep.
albums, My World 2.0, Never Say Never, um, all his recent ones. I'm forgetting the
I
names.
can't think of the only album I know is the one that has like Sorry. Well, what's the like? But every song on that album is absolute fire. Like I remember sharing memes with my friends. Like if Justin Bieber does not stop putting out Bob after Bob, I'm starting to turn into a believer. Like
Purpose,
Purpose. That was it. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Believe. Yeah.
Yeah, that album was phenomenal. But like again, I think he started in the 2010. He started when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Like Taylor Swift started when I was just entering middle school. Like it's still longer following, but Justin also fell off. Like he doesn't put out music that much anymore.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the rabid fan. Like he still has a rabid fan base, but not to the degree
Not,
that
yeah.
Taylor does.
And not even to the degree that he used to have.
No, not even a little bit. No, I think Taylor has transcended a lot of time. And I think she's also the one that's routinely putting out things. And I think when we look back on the 2010s or the 2005 to 2020 era, like you look back on the 1975 to 1985 era, or 1970 to 1985 era, and you look back at that, you go, oh, Led Zeppelin, Beatles, or I say Aerosmith, other people disagree, Rolling Stones, stuff like that. Taylor Swift is going to be like the Elton John, the Beatles, those names. She is going to be the one from this generation.
100%.
Without question. I think she's going to be the Beatles, like the one with that big of a claim, because that's just how big she is.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've just been like sitting here just like gushing over Taylor Swift for a very long time. If you like what you hear, please be sure to give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating. Tell a friend about us if you have a friend that's a Swiftie that also would like to just hear about us gush over Taylor Swift and talk about her in excruciating detail. Let them know where they can find us.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on social media. We're at We Need to Calm Down Podcast, WNTCD on Twitter, but the other name on Instagram, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to see our beautiful faces.
Definitely. If you have a suggestion for an episode, drop us a comment or a DM. We love hearing from you guys. And we've made episodes in the past, and we actually have episodes lined up that were based on recommendations from you guys. So please keep sending those in.
Yes, aside from that, thank you for listening to the We Need to Calm Down podcast. We will see you next typical Tuesday. Enjoy whatever Thanksgiving looks like
be safe
this year. Yes, please be safe. Continue to follow CDC recommendations. But yeah, all right, come back.
We'll be here.